Hello, everybody. I'm Joe, and this is the DM Toolbox, your go-to place to get all the tools you need to enhance your D&D games. Today, we have something a little different than normal. I have some special guests with me. I have Jonathan G. Nelson and Thilo Graf of AAW Games to talk about their new Kickstarter, Rultmoork. How's it going, guys?
Greetings! It is going well.
Awesome. Thilo, how are you?
Greetings, and thank you so much for having me, Joe. It's a pleasure seeing you again.
Absolutely. So, for those of you who don't know, we all went to Gen Con together. I had the privilege of working at the AAW booth with these guys and helping to run games.
Yeah.
We had a blast.
Yeah, it was super fun. Lots of memorable moments, especially right at the beginning. We had to redo the whole booth because stuff was not quite where we wanted it to be. Flights got delayed. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes people don't even know about, right? And it looks all organized and nice when you get there, but you don't know about the chaos that happens prior to that. So with all the delayed flights due to storms and stuff like that, I got in super late the night before. So some of the team was trying to scramble to set up the booth. Well, they did their best. I mean, and I appreciate it so much because we could not have done it without them. But there were still some things to work out. And we realized, the carpet needs to get moved. That means we have to move the tables, which means we have to move up boxes, et cetera, et cetera. So pretty soon, everything's coming out of the booth and then kind of everything's going back in. Well, Joe shows up. He's supposed to be off helping GMs get ready for games. And we're all of a sudden moving boxes and books and things, which he didn't intend to do. And then something happened. What happened, Joe?
So first off, it was raining that morning and it was muggy. I'm from Arizona, so I'm used to this dry weather. So I walked the not even half mile from the hotel to the convention center and I was dying. I was so sweaty. So I get in there and we're helping out, and just getting into the convention hall before it opens when you don't have the right badge was a challenge, but I was able to sneak in. And then
you rolled a successful either stealth check or persuasion
check pass. It was more of a bluff. More of a bluff check.
A little bit of deception.
Yeah. So I got
bit.
in there and we were moving boxes. I bend down to pick up a box and I hear this ripping sound. I look down and my shorts were split open from like the bottom of the seam all the way up to my crotch. Just a giant hole this big in my shorts. And what can you do? We kept setting up books. We got it going. The hall opened.
It's not a good way to start Gen Con with a giant hole in your pants.
Yeah. I'm like walking around. I'm like, I'm going to get arrested. Like, there's a lot of kids here. So I had underwear on. But then I had to go meet up with GMs and hand out badges still before I could even get back to the hotel, change, and then come back. So first day of Gen Con was fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's the way it goes. It's like usually your first experience at Gen Con, especially if you're working with a company or running booths or games or what have you, it's like, nothing ever goes as planned, ever. I mean, one of the other days too was like, I got this text message and I'm like, what's going on? I'm like barely awake because the day before we worked all day. We were planning on working all day, but we did because stuff happens.
Right.
And then there's a text and it's like, we had one DM has COVID, another one didn't show up. Now 2 of us that are supposed to open the booth. Now we have to go run games. Can you be at the booth at this time? And I look at what time it is. I'm like, oh crap. So I sent Maddie, my stepdaughter, my soon to be stepdaughter, I sent her off. I'm like, please go get food. And then I'm like, Carly, help me get ready. My fiance. And so I'm like eating a breakfast sandwich while someone's helping me like do my hair. And I'm trying to get clothes on and getting the money and running out the door to get down to the booth and literally running. And you're not supposed to run. So I'm walking very fast and Maddie's trying to keep up behind me and she has to run to keep up with me. And yeah. And so we ended up, we were actually trying to get ahead of people. We were in the convention center and the exhibitors hall is now open and there's people going, we know they're going to our booth right now and there's nobody there. There's a bunch of books and stuff sitting out and there's nobody manning the booth. And so Maddie and I are just bolting to get down there and we got there right in the nick of time.
Yeah.
So.
No, there was, because we had Thilo took over.
I think Thilo was down there and I was like, thank God you're here.
On that day, I filled in for one that we had to run. And then Thomas, I think, did at least one, if not two. So
yeah, he was right. He had to keep subbing for people because there was some DM that didn't show up that was supposed to run multiple games, right?
Yep. So yeah, it was a challenge, but it was fun. It was a learning experience. I think we learned a lot. I think next year we're going to do it better.
Yep. We'll have backups and backups of backups is what I found is important. It's kind of like when you back up your hard drive. It's like, don't just have one backup. have two, because you know something's going to happen. If your hard drive, your real computer fails, that backup hard drive inevitably go, oh no, it got corrupted or some stupid thing. So you better have a backup of your backup.
I think part of the problem with my first Gen Con experience was the previous year, where I was helping out the Kobolds run games because our friend Ben couldn't make it. And it was a much smaller convention that year. It was a reduced capacity, it was reduced size.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of games, and it went pretty smooth. It went smooth, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't that hard. I could do this again." And it was a lot harder this time. So I learned and I adapted, and I think we'll do better next year. It was fun though.
And of course,
you were on that Gen Con high for like 2 weeks afterwards, where your body's home but your mind is still back there.
I know, it's crazy because it's, like we were saying before we started with this recording, it's like we really, really wanted to, we were like, we're going to play a game. It's like every Gen Con I always intend, I'm going to play a game. All I've ever played in all the years of Gen Con so far is one game that Reg McReynolds ran us in a tavern somewhere where we were all playing characters that we made on our napkins. And it was fun. It was a blast, but it was like a 1.5 hour game that we did in the bar, and he was all sweaty and running around table to table telling people what was happening, which was really fun. But it's like, I want to run an actual game this time. I'm going to run a game for my friends. This is going to be cool. And we'll have, everybody will be there. We'll have Maddie and Carly and Joe and Thomas and, Thilo and Joe and the whole crew, right? We're all here. So we're going to run this game. Well, no. With all the chaos happened, we just didn't do it. So it's like next year we have to figure out a way that we can all play in a game together. And I even thought it'd be fun. Like maybe we have rotating DMs, like maybe we just do it on the fly, and I'll start it out, and then Thilo will come in and try to kill your character, and we'll just keep.
Try.
Yes. And for those of you who never had Jonathan GM, I go, hey, you want to run a game? He's like, yeah. Roll 3d6 straight down, those are your stats. I'm like, what? Not 4d6, drop the lowest, any order. 3d6 straight down.
Yeah, because if we're gonna play a game at Gen Con, I mean, let's face it, it's kind of like life. It's like life has its ups and downs, right? And the reason life is so precious is the gift of life is we know that we could lose it at any time. So it's like when you're playing a game, knowing that this character that you've created for Gen Con could inevitably die, makes it a little bit more exciting, especially if it's just a one shot thing we're doing at Gen Con. And who knows, maybe it's a game that we play where you guys play and each year you level up, so you 3d6 straight down, you're level 1. If you survive, that character becomes level 2 next year. If you die, your character next year is level 1. You have to start out. Now you're playing level 1 character with the level 2 group. If you die again, now you're level 1. You're playing the level 3 group. The third year.
I rolled up a good character too. I actually rolled good on mine. I had like a 17 intelligence character.
You did, and that's really rare.
My dice rolls and everything, and I was like, man, it's a good character. I'm gonna play this dude.
Yeah, I have an Aventryr Adventures game going. Actually, we have a game session later this month with the group, and they're playing in the northwestern area, the disputed territories, in a city that hasn't fully been fleshed out and explored in my campaign setting. So we're doing that. And these guys, I had them do the same thing, and they were like, wait, 3d6 straight down, like what do we add to it? And nothing, just roll it. Like, what if it sucks? I'm like, well, you just play it. Yep. And then it'll give you an opportunity to really role play a unique character. I mean, that's the fun of it, That's the Dragonlance Chronicles. Those were actual, before they were books, those were actual people who were playing those characters, and they rolled some of those characters. They rolled really crappy. Caramon, I think, was some horrible intelligence, like 5 intelligence or something. So
I think it was like 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, maybe when he got to higher level, he increased by some amount. But it's like
wisdom.
Yeah, I think he had good wisdom. But yeah, he his intelligence was really low, so he had to role play that, and it was kind of fun because that's how the brothers Caramon and Raceland, that's how that kind of came about. Raceland was a really intelligent one with really crappy charisma, and then Caramon was the big burly guy with a great strength but not too smart. So it can make for interesting character development.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I think that's the fun of it, right? I mean,
yeah,
seeing what you can do with that is always interesting, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. It's good fun.
So speaking of your campaign setting, I don't think I've ever asked you where you came up with your setting. Like, I know Rise of the Drow, I know the story behind that. Did the setting come from needing a setting when you started publishing, or was it something you had been developing before that?
The setting came from kind of when I started writing the A series, the very first adventure. The very first one was not actually Crow's Rest Island. That one came later. That was the first adventure ever created for Roll20, and we did that one as like a prelude to the first one, which was Crypt of the Sunlord. And so with the A series, we were just starting out basically, hey, we're making this website. We want people to be able to log in here and play our games online and access it all from like a tablet or a laptop or what have you. So you don't have to take all these books with you, and everything would be, you could click a little hyperlink, or everything was integrated in the site, way before this was a thing. This is way before anybody else was really doing it. Right. And so there are JavaScript boxes you can click, open and close, stuff like that. But yeah, anytime you write an adventure, you're like, this is taking place somewhere, right? And so initially, Crypt of the Sunlord is just kind of a location, right? And we started to kind of flesh out the area a little bit. Oh, it's on Serpent Lake. Okay. Well, there needs to be a village. There needs to be some place where all this stuff kind of takes place. And we came up with Rybalka, and it was originally Todd Gamble and I still remember him and I would take trips down to the river in summer here in Snoqualmie. And we'd hang out by the river and like skip rocks or just sit and talk. And just daydream of these different worlds, and sometimes even look at some of the little pools that were created in the ground and kind of, pretend like, hey, we're kind of world building in it, like on a bigger scale, like looking at a river and little like tributaries and things coming off, into it and things like that. And like, okay, well, this is Obor over here, and here's the Silent Forest. And, what if this was like this? And, talking about different ideas and where things are located and what lives there and why it lives there and how those races, how they relate to each other, these different cultures and these different races and things. And, one of the things I came up with early on was the Clavic Kingdom and the Vic Mordair. And I wanted to have this kind of struggle, basically the traditional story of, nature versus civilization, or, civilization coming in and dominating, taking all the resources away. Well, the people that have realized that that's not the right way to do things are trying to say, hey, stop, you're destroying the very fabric of life itself. There's a balance here, and you're taking it away for, limited profit in your short lives, and it's like, kind of telling like an overarching story by using a setting, right? And maybe encouraging people in this world to kind of take notice of, oh, wow, that's happening all around us all the time. And what can we do to change that? And it's like, so it started out on kind of a small scale, looking at Rybalka, the characters in and around Rybalka, the little stories that take place, and how the characters can come in and go on these different quests and meet Igor Leonid and some of the other characters there. And then it started to build out from there. So Rybalka was kind of like in the Forgotten Realms, how like Shadowdale is just this little village in the Dale Lands, right? But Elminster, the most powerful, wondrous mage in all the realms, lives in this little village, and so a lot takes place in this little village of Shadowdale. So it's kind of like, that's our Shadowdale, right? And so we've explored a lot of that area, but what we haven't explored, and we even explored that in Rise of the Drow, also Into the Wintry Gale, which is going to be completely redone, or actually already has been working, and that's kind of a secret, but now you guys know. It's going to be completely redone. And currently the working title is Frostbite Inferno, but that's probably not going to be the final title of it. But Into the Wintry Gale is being redone as well. And that's a story all about the Jotun, the giants of the region. And that takes place in that same area of Vic Mordair, the Vic Mordair region in the Serpent Lake, very cold, inhospitable climates and what have you. And that one's very leans towards the, essentially like the Native American meets, Viking kind of mashup that the Vic Mordair are, right?
And you mentioned too, so for those of you who don't know, Jonathan doesn't have a campaign setting book, but if you go to AAW site, they've got all of their campaign stuff for free, on there. Like, you can browse through, and it's, a nice handy tool if you're playing their setting. But you mentioned that region is more kind of like Siberia type of Russian influences, yet you have these Viking influences too. I thought that was kind of neat how you kind of mash that up. Is that what the two kingdoms, is it like a kind of like this Russian type kingdom and this Viking type civilization that are kind of, but
yes. Yeah, so you've got, the Vic Mordair in this area is kind of framed by this mountain range that is very difficult to traverse, right? And so there's only a couple of ways in and out of there. And the Clavic Kingdom has dominated the land. They're the most powerful kingdom in all of Aventryr. Aventryr is basically like Pangea. It's a massive continent. It's thousands of miles across. So the Clavic Kingdom dominates a large section of that, and they're the most powerful country. They've been around for a long time, and they're kind of like ancient Russia. And they butt up against and kind of almost actually surround the Vic Mordair, which isn't an official country per se, but they're a whole bunch of different tribal cultures that live in that area. And so that area is kind of, the Clavic Kingdom is spread out and around that, and they're trying to get in there and get at the resources. They want to mine, they want to, log, they want to get at the resources in that area. But there's these pesky Vic Mordair that live there, that they see as an unimportant people, but they actually have a rich culture going way back. And one of the secrets too that I haven't really talked about a whole lot, but will come out in some future book, is that, you know, the Vikmordare and the Klavekians actually have a mutual ancestor. And so they actually are, in a way, kind of brothers and sisters, and that someday they may actually find this out and see where that goes, right? But the Klavek kingdom wants to get in there, and so it's created that's where the nature versus civilization comes in, right? The Klavek kingdom wants to get in and get at the resources, and the Vikmordare, which are these, you know, mashup of the Vikings and Native Americans, want to protect that land. But we've developed that area very well with all of the A series adventures, with Into the Wintry Gale, Rise of the Drow, all of that takes place both there and below the surface in the Underdark. That area's been extensively developed. My home game, we had delved off into the disputed territories. And the reason why we went off over this other direction was that there's some interesting places to explore down there. There's some very dangerous things pushing the civilization in that region. Off in the area where this takes place, where Rultmoork, this Kickstarter and this story takes place, which you can transport into any setting. You could drop it into your own world very easily, or into the Forgotten Realms, and we can provide examples of where it would fit in well. But yeah, down over to the southwest in the disputed territories, there's this area, it's Chonia. And this area also has kind of a tribal people that are currently, they're like a nomadic tribal people, very equestrian. Almost everyone grows up with a horse. And this area is very dry, and it's an arid environment. Lake Chonia has been drying up every year. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. It's still a pretty large lake, but it's becoming kind of, the edges are becoming kind of more swamp-like, and it's starting to, as the levels go down, these ancient ruins are starting to be exposed, and these ancient ruins are Grekian. And this kind of tips people off, you know, who are the Grekians? Well, the Grekians were an ancient civilization that existed in this region long ago. Well, how come no one's really heard of them? They've almost been erased from existence. Well, the Grekians were a semi-advanced, semi-magical advanced civilization that delved a little too far into the planar realms, and they dabbled with some powers that they weren't supposed to dabble with. They got a little bit too far into the realm of the gods. And so by divine decree, the gods basically kind of erased all knowledge of Grecia and the Grecian language. So these kind of clues unearthed, and this is if you want to play like in our setting, you know, there's a whole series of blog posts that you can go from location to location that are already there and usable. Eventually, through all your travels here, you discover this ancient spire. And as legend has it, people say that spire was once a giant, and it was turned to stone long ago. And connected to this huge spire in this kind of arid wasteland up in the Bavonian Mountains, just adjacent to Lake Chonia in that region. There's the spire, and it has this ancient stone bridge connected to it. And from here, I'm going to pass the torch to Thilo, because Thilo, this is my return to adventure writing after working extensively with Stephen Yeardley on Rise of the Drow and a whole bunch of other adventures. But that was the last large adventure I did. And after 3 years of working on this, basically, I brought this to Thilo, and Thilo happened to be in the US the first time my group was playing through Rultmoork at the part where it goes into the dungeon, and he actually got to play it. But I will pass the torch to Thilo so he can tell you a little bit more about his perspective, because Thilo was absolutely integral for this process. Without Thilo, we wouldn't have ended up creating such a splendid book. So I want him to tell a little bit more about Rultmoork and about what you encounter and what you see across this bridge in these ancient ruins here, these ancient Grecian ruins.
So, first of all, I want to start with this little description of the spire, because it has survived in the various iterations, been slightly modified, but that what caught my attention from the first second where we actually played it. Solitary and solemn it stands, an anomaly set apart from the wind-blasted mountain range beyond, almost cylindrical and ragged, a rock formation just like a broken bone from the parched soil, rising to storm-blasted heights from the barren land, its mottled gray rock a distinct foreign body among the ochre cracks. Amazing. So you have this strange spire, and just by the texture of it being separated from the mountain range, of being a different color, you all already have this strange, fantastic angle. You have this weird connecting bridge up somewhere on the top. But that's not how I encountered Rultmoork first, because Jonathan's group back then was a little bit farther. They had found a hidden entrance that led down below to the very dungeons of Rultmoork. And they had actually smashed their faces against this particular door, because if you picture, for example, the doors to Moria or something like that, ginormous golden doors with gleaming runes, obviously magical, out of some strange metal from a culture that you've never heard anything about, and you just try to get in because it seems to be impervious to magic, to all kinds of different things. So I joined that particular game when they managed to get through those doors, and even having this notion of, being among the first who managed to walk through those ancient gates, who actually managed to bypass the powerful magics and go down into this dungeon, set up this whole iconic sense of, treading where no one had passed or walked for perhaps centuries, perhaps even millennia. We walked down those mist-shrouded stairs, flanked by this darksome abyss where things you don't even want to think about at that particular level were somewhere in the darkness waiting, which also, by the way, influenced my own writing of the Lightless Abyss for the Survivor's Guide to Spelunking, if anyone out there knows about that.
I never even fully realized that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that was one of the reasons I wanted that particular region in that book. So there was always this notion of impending danger far beyond your ability to confront. And we went down those mist-shrouded strange stairs and arrived at what seemed like, a ruin. And that was the first time I, as a German, encountered dynamic dungeons and their moving maps. Because Jonathan has this fantastic setup where his gaming table has this ginormous screen with protective glass on top of it, and he can just show those huge wonderful battle maps that actually move and react to stuff you do and move your characters around. And I had my roll 3d6 down character. I was actually halfway competent in at least one ability score.
I can't believe I made you do that on Rultmoork, which is like the deadliest thing I've ever created. I made you do the 3d6 straight down. That's just brutal. How could I do such a thing?
So, you're giving these awesome descriptions, and I know you guys can't see it. I've been pulling up the art of the spire and of the door and of the stairs going down, and your descriptions. This is the first time I'm hearing these descriptions. I really haven't seen much of this book yet. So hearing the descriptions and now seeing the art is absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait to see this book, guys.
So what happened next, Thilo? You had your 3d6 straight down character. You're joining our group. You're here from Deutschland, visiting, and somehow I'm throwing you into the dungeon of Rultmoork with my friends.
So the first thing that happened, by the way, your gaming group is absolutely fantastic. Shout out to the crew, absolutely fantastic people. The first thing that kind of happened, we walked across, the edge of the corridor, and they were already telling me, dude, seriously, this dungeon is going to be really nasty. So this is a minor spoiler for Rultmoork, but it might potentially perhaps reduce the amount of fatalities in the very first dungeon room.
Hey, if you're going to drop a spoiler and we're dropping secrets, we're doing it for Joe. We've already dropped multiple things we've never told anyone else before. So if you're not watching DM Toolbox, well, sorry, you're not going to get all that special spoilers.
Heard it here first, guys.
Yeah, because Joe's our buddy. So
exactly. So the thing that happened was we noticed something gleaming in the center of the floor, and then after that, another one of those golden doors, though a smaller one that gleamed like bronze with those little blue specks, and so some glowing runes atop it. So I was a rogue because I gravitate towards being thieves, rogue, specialists, and stuff like that in games I play because it forces me, to play with my brain. Anyway, so I sneaked forward and I had a bad feeling, and I saw this object gleaming in the middle of the room, and I tried in this corridor, and I tried to jump across it. What happened is, of course, I roll, I think, like a 3 or something like that, and totally botched my jump check to get farther than I actually could jump because my strength score was abysmal. So I only made like 2 5 feet squares or something like that, something utterly ridiculous. And then I hit the trigger, and I was like, oh no. And I rolled to the front, and the center part of this place, of this trapdoor, smashed down. This object in the middle fell down into this pit. And at that moment, in front of the pit and behind the pit, flanking the adventuring party, the walls started to kind of shimmer as though they were not really solid. And in this moment, a group of strange skeletons emerged from both places, bearing tower shields, bearing weapons, and they were all coated in this strange bronze-like metal with these golden flecks. And I was like, oh, damn, they look like, Terminators, and they start moving towards us, in this perfectly synchronized manner. They came walking towards us, and I was like, oh my God. And I tried to get past them, and I actually managed to do that. Some of the other characters we had, among others, and a Hooling, so one of the bad people who can fly from underworld races and classes. He, scouted around the area, and those skeletons just tried to, shuffle most people out. But then things started to go really sideways because essentially the pit wasn't just a pit. Then we heard the sound, and then suddenly I did use poison gas coming up from pit. Ouch. And then
the pit was also lined with spikes. I might add in.
Yeah, and then there was
some object had fallen in there.
And then there was this fun moment when everyone's jaws, including mine, just dropped when the first person started attacking one of those metal-coated skeletons. And from this mechanic, almost construct-like approach, they started acting, like proper intelligent adversaries. And instead of dealing damage to the target, there was this magical reaction powered by this weird metal coating, and the attack rebounded on the originator. So the character who tried, hitting them actually got hit by this brutal assault that was just as strong as their own one. And we were like, oh. So what I did was, because, rogue loyalty, so I crouched down next to the doors and tried hard deciphering the weird runes, because they had not attained any cipher or stuff like that, without being toasted by any magical defenses, while the rest of the party fought for their lives against those nigh unbeatable guardians, tried to avoid all the poison gas and tried to avoid, this issue. I think one of the characters actually fell down the pit and then realized that, moving in the pit actually helps the poison gas spread.
As I step on the panels, it triggers more poison gas, so the poison gas starts spreading further. The adversaries, which we can call it now, the Grekian guardians, started to try to herd people off the edge of the of the stairs into this abyss where you just fall hundreds of feet to your death. If you attack them, they would deal the damage right back to you.
Who writes this evil stuff, man?
It was actually it was me, but I didn't used to be that evil with stuff. I actually attribute that to, just as Thilo is influencing the Lightless Abyss from Survivalist Guide to Spelunking to something I've created. I have to attribute this to Cliff Jones, CJ Jones, who was actually the IT director of Gen Con and also our former dungeon master, who sadly passed away some years ago, but was a very good friend of ours, and from whom I adopted half of our current gaming group after he passed. And CJ actually was friends with Peter Atkinson way back before Wizards of the Coast. They were all friends in college. And so he gamed with Peter for years, and they started Wizards of the Coast together way back when. So he worked with Peter for years and then ended up being IT director at Gen Con. So games at his house were equally fun, with multiple monitors on the walls and stuff that all had like fantasy grounds and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But his games were brutal. Like, you would not believe, if you did not know what you were doing, if it was like chess, but playing against an extremely difficult adversary. And so CJ taught me how to set up certain combat scenarios that, while absolutely brutal, it gives players the chance to succeed, but you have to use your wits. You have to plan ahead. If you just do something on your turn, you're probably going to get a TPK, or at least your character's going to die, because you've got to make every single round count. So I give tribute out to Cliff Jones, CJ Jones, who I feel inspired a lot of Rultmoork.
Very, very cool.
One thing that I like about Rultmoork versus some other quote unquote killer dungeons or killer adventures is that you can see the design philosophy of being extremely brutal, which I adore as a player and as a GM, because I'm the same way. I'm a killer GM unless I actually run games, for people not familiar with role-playing games or with the role system. Then I tend to be rather lenient and try to teach them. But for experienced players and groups, I am absolutely brutal, regardless of the system I actually run the game in. And the thing is, there's a thin line between being brutal and being unfair. And I think Rultmoork can be brutal in pretty much every single instance, but I always considered it to be fair. Even back then, when I was running essentially when I was playing it rather in the prototype way back when, before Jonathan, refined Rultmoork into the book you see now.
Yeah.
And we have obviously adjusted it in several ways. But yeah, it's always fair, and the adventure always rewards being smart as a player over just rolling high. If you think that you can beat the adventure just by, rolling only nat 20s, you're not. Mm-hmm. You're just not.
In fact, it might actually be the death of you in this particular situation. If you roll a nat 20 on one of these guardians and you haven't figured out how to deal with them properly, that nat 20 is going to bounce back and rebound on you, and you're going to cack yourself to bits.
I noticed you haven't mentioned how to deal with them properly.
No. We're not going to spoil that here. No way are we spoiling that. That's up to the players to figure out. That's just one, and that's just one scenario out of many.
And there are multiple ways, not just one.
Right.
Because
every single thing we've presented, there are multiple ways to get around it. Dealing with Grecian, for example, it's an ancient language. You need to figure out how to get through. How to figure out how do I decipher this. Well, there's multiple ways to do that. We're not going to tell you what they all are, but there's multiple ways. It's not just one option. So it puts a lot in the hands of the players as far as like where they want, what angle they want to come at things. So, because all groups handle things differently. So
I'm loving what I'm seeing on this so far. And I know, Jonathan, you obviously, this is kind of the first time you've written anything. Throwing your D20 at me. This is the first time you've really written something new in a while. What kind of what inspired this? What brought it back?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I'm always writing. I'm always writing things. It just is a matter of, does it make it all the way to publishing, right? And the thing is, for a long time, I've been playing the role of publisher. And while I love playing that role, it's actually tends to be, even though you might see it in the hierarchy up near the top, it is more of a support role. Playing publisher is kind of a support role underneath everything else, kind of tying everything together, But the reason why I started my company to begin with was not necessarily to be a publisher, actually was to write and to be creative. When I was a kid, I wanted to do three things. Since I was really little, I wanted to be a musician, a chef, and an author. And so I did the music thing, was a professional touring musician in the United States for a couple of years, video on MTV2 and MTV3. I did the chef gig where I was a sous chef for 11 years in a bunch of different restaurants, primarily Italian. And then I did the writing thing, which was writing adventures. And as they got, the whole thing got bigger and bigger and more popular, I found myself kind of shifted off to the role of publisher. And so over time, my gaming group has played through different creations of mine. And this particular one, when they played through it, it was really brutal. And some of them did complain along the way, of how brutal it was. But in a way, it was like almost like the people that were complaining were even more happy when they were able to overcome those difficult challenges. Just like in life, a lot of times we don't remember like the really easy days, but you'll remember the really difficult days, especially if those difficult days led you to where you are now and gave you something, gave you a new skill in something, or gave you the ability to handle stress better, or whatever it is, the ability to be a better parent, right? So you're more patient with your kids, those types of things. But this particular adventure was so memorable to them. And by the time they got through the final battle, they said that battle was one of the best kind of boss battles that they have ever played in and fought in their entire lives. And they still talk about it every once in a while, almost every game session, actually. If I'm together with that particular group, which I game with a few different groups now, that particular group, that comes up in conversation quite often, that final battle. And they just thought that was the most epic battle ever. And since they had such a good time playing Rultmoork, and it was such an enjoyable experience, it made sense to take that particular creation and move it from the realm of what might be considered homebrew into more of a professional arena, which is where Thilo came in. I'm like, okay, I've been in this. I can't see the forest for the trees, kind of like AO4, forest for the trees. It's like, when you're in the thick of things, you can't see where the holes are, where the pitfalls are, where the problems are. So it's like I kind of need Thilo to help me find those, literary and editorial traps, and also help, not only fill in those traps, but create other ones, and new ones and other modes. And Thilo came up with the idea of hardcore mode because I wanted a really brutal dungeon, but I also didn't want to just TPK every group. So, Thilo was able to really help me refine this. And through the process, in extensive playtesting, we did a whole bunch of playtesting with all kinds of different groups that are extremely talented. They've been playing since they were little kids and now are like 50 years old and just bypass everything and know how to work together like you wouldn't believe, to newer groups that even players that didn't have a ton of experience, have only been playing for a year or two. And we got a lot of great feedback, and we were able to refine it. And this adventure has been completely rewritten 3 times to really make it what it is now. And that's kind of what we're doing with AAW Games. Is our motto now is color outside the lines, but also quality instead of quantity. Back in the day, we'd push out a lot of stuff. And yeah, we do still do a mini dungeon every week, but they're just these double-sided short things. And back in the day, we'd publish sometimes 64-page adventures once a week, which was insane. Absolutely insane. And the quality couldn't go into it because, even though some of them did turn out really good and we had some fantastic work, we just couldn't refine them, and this one has that refinement. It's been aged, it's the fine scotch, so it's really, thanks to Thilo, come a long ways. And I think Thilo can talk a little bit more about that if he's okay with delving into that.
Just so everybody knows, when Jonathan was mentioning the hardcore mode and you saw Thilo's evil smile, that's not his evil smile, that's just how he looks all the time.
Yeah, it's my default modus operandi. So essentially, hardcore mode, what is that about? Some groups tend to be focused on the narrative of a given campaign, on the narrative of the characters, and so on and so forth. So those groups tend to dislike it when, their characters start dying left and right. On the other hand, some groups out there really enjoy the whole challenge aspect of some role-playing game adventures, where you actually need to really use your wits to the best of your abilities. Your characters have to be efficient in what they do, and so on and so forth. So how do you blend those audiences? And my response to that was hardcore mode. So Rultmoork as an adventure is structured and mathematically balanced in a way that it presents a challenge, and a hard challenge, let me make that abundantly clear, for pretty much every group. However, it has this additional little sprinkling that you can add, that zinger of ghost chili pepper flakes if you want to. And that is hardcore mode for me, because I know that when I, for example, try to run a published adventure for my gaming group, they are bored out of their wits, because they usually have optimized characters. They are extremely efficient in dealing with particular challenges. They know all of the rules and stuff like that. So what they do is they crush most types of resistances, and even, punch way above the weight class. So it's not that uncommon for my party to, for example, manage to finish an adventure that's like 3 or 4 levels above the recommended level of the range.
These are your standard published adventures that you would find
exactly
in any gaming shop or what have you. Yeah.
So for Rultmoork, for example, the official published level range would be levels 5 to 7. However, and that is a big however, hardcore mode allows you to extend that range by a significant amount. Mm-hmm. What do I mean with hardcore mode? Hardcore mode is not just a mathematical escalation, It's not just, those spikes suddenly do this and that much more damage. But it's rather a complication while playing a certain part of the adventure. For example, instead of a fixed amount of enemies coming from that trigger trap, an infinite amount might come from it in certain intervals. So you actually have to think of how you can, deal with that particular aspect. Some other aspects add, a further insult to already insult added to injury. There is this particular trap where you trigger something bad happens, you get impaled on spikes, and then if you choose the appropriate hardcore mode option, those spikes, have a kind of internal motor that makes those little barbs twist to the outside and start spin and, generate those huge holes. You probably have seen at one point a tentacle-based magical trap that, tries to squeeze you to death or something like that. Okay, if you hardcore mode that, those tentacles might try to drag you into the solid walls, which is not particularly conducive to your health, i.e. if you get dragged into the walls by those tentacles, it's end game for you. So
in addition, you might have additional complications like the walls, might come, the walls indoor ceiling might start to come in on you. There's additional challenges that you have to overcome while already dealing with something really shitty.
Yeah. So hardcore mode to me is not about just increasing the numbers, but it's about challenging the group that plays the game more by adding something that is not just, you take X amounts of damage because I said so, but rather this is the additional challenge that you face now. How are you going to deal with it? And if you don't deal with it, it will hurt you even worse. So that's one of the design tenets for hardcore mode that I personally really enjoyed crafting for Rultmoork. And the other aspect of it is we've all been there. Every GM has been there. You prepare this cool, super challenging, dungeon, and you think, okay, unless they roll like super well all the time, it'll be super strenuous. And then what happens? Of course, they have a streak. 20, 20, 20, 18, 19, 18, 19, 20, 20. And all your perfectly calibrated adversaries fall completely aside. And then at one point, your party reaches the big boss of the dungeon, and they're like, yeah, we still have all our resources, so just, blast that boss to smithereens. And the next function, or the other important function of hardcore mode, is obviously that it allows the GM to modify the module on the fly. If you notice that, okay, stuff is becoming too difficult or too easy for the party, you can just hardcore mode it up or take your hardcore mode choices out of the respective solution. And it also includes a couple of special instances. For example, there is a particular combat that some groups will enjoy, while others probably will enjoy it not as much. And it depends on whether you're hardcore moded up, whether that can be, a pretty fast combat that you can quickly run, and the party will feel great after they finished it. Or if you want to really make it an epic confrontation that the party will talk for ages about. So
will there be, you're making it sound like I can choose to go hardcore mode in some challenges, not others. So when there's some specific trap or fight or challenge, is there like a box on the side that says hardcore mode, and here are the adjustments you make? So you don't have to be like all hardcore mode or all not. You can say, this one challenge I want hardcore mode, because that sounds
laddered in blood.
Yeah,
and it's easy to do on the fly.
You can find them by looking for the blood splatters.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the layout we have the skull icon, the subheader hardcore mode, and blood splatters behind them to make it really obvious. And there's another aspect about Rultmoork I really enjoy, and that is at a glance section. So some of the challenges are pretty complex, and any GM who has run a complex trap and a combat, for example, combined, knows that, keeping everything flowing can be a challenge. That's why there are at a glance sections. So essentially at the start of one section of Rultmoork, you have the sidebar, this box that essentially tells you, this is the trap subheader, and then you have, those bullet point like rules components that tell you DC 18 wisdom perception to notice and so on and so forth.
Perfect.
And then you still have the detailed text, obviously, for the respective environment. But if you need to reference something quickly on the fly, you just flip open the at a glance section and you have everything you need right then and there. And you don't have to,
I was thinking about how many times I've been, DMing a fight, and, I'm like, they're going to blow through this, or I'm going to kill them in like one round, and I need to adjust on the fly. So I like the idea of being able to switch the mode on the fly without, rather than just, I'm going to add some hit points or I'm going to take some hit points away or whatever. I like the idea of having this little set that I can kind of adjust it on the fly and adjust the challenge appropriately for them.
Yeah, and the at a glance sections too are also designed thanks to the playtest. A lot of this stuff was added, and the at a glance sections, which Thilo created, are the other aspect of that, which is when you're DMing and you are on the fly. You're always on the fly. You're always on the edge of your seat, trying to roll with the punches, trying to keep the game flowing. The last thing you want to do is be digging through a book while you're trying to run something exciting. It's very anticlimactic to have this big stage and then all of a sudden stop while you look for something. So the at a glance sections allow you to go to one area where you already know, for this dungeon room, everything's there. You scan down the text, you've got all your stuff, you just grab it and go.
It's like the DM prep is done for you.
Exactly. So you're ready to roll with that. And then since we've kind of talked about a little bit about like setting the story and the stage and the culture, and then we went into kind of game mechanics for a little bit. What do you guys think about maybe letting me talk a little bit about the background and the story of Rultmoork, and then maybe we can come and circle back to flow and stagnation.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to talk about the flow and stagnation. That aspect interests me a lot. So
yeah, so
go ahead and tell us a little bit about the background.
Is that okay, Thilo, if we take it and run from this angle for a little bit? So let's go from the background. So 1,000 years ago, Rultmoork was a temple to Vasi, the water goddess. And if you're placing this like in the Forgotten Realms or your own setting, you can simply change the name of the goddess to another god or goddess. It's essentially a goddess. Vasi is the goddess of fresh water, of fresh life-giving water specifically. And so it wasn't always so. It was Fort Rultmoork. And it was this Grekian fort along this well-traveled road through these mountains over 1,000 years ago. And the Vasians who followed the goddess Vasi, they decided that this land had become very dry, this particular region, and it was becoming more dry as the years passed by. And so they wanted to bring life back to the land. And so they came up with this idea of creating a temple to Vasi, but not just a temple. They wanted to create something really magnificent. So they came up with this idea of creating this water clock. And so you can picture like a yin yang symbol, right? Laid on its side. Like if you took the yin yang and laid it down on its side and created two flows of water on each side of it that flow in. The water is tapped into the elemental plane of water, and the water comes in and flows through the water clock and is blessed by the high priestess of Vasi and her followers, to then form two life-giving holy rivers that flow from the mountains. And it just is this kind of one of the wonders of the world being created in this location, right? And so it was this great undertaking, this great feat of mastery to be able to do all of this. But once things were constructed, everything was seemingly going well, and things lasted for a time. For a time, things were really good. Life came back to the land. The people began to flourish. And this was in the time of Grecia, where this civilization that I said, at some point was kind of erased from existence by divine decree of the gods, which we'll get into probably later maybe in the story and in future books. But they, at a certain point there, other nations, other countries began to say, think, well, this Grecia is getting a little too strong. They're building, they're getting a little too advanced. And so they started running into some push and shove from the outside. And eventually, through various times, struggles and what have you, war eventually came to Grecia in different forms, and eventually came to Rultmoork itself. And when it came to Rultmoork itself, the high priestess, not wanting the water clock and these great wonders in the temple and the rivers to fall into the hands of these adversaries that are coming in, locked herself and all of the priests down away into the dungeons of Rultmoork, which essentially was their temple at the time. And we can't talk a lot about that because there are a lot of spoilers involving the past. But we haven't talked about this on other podcasts or anything either. But what we will say on this podcast is that just while the duality angle is adventure, we have above and below. Above are the ancient ruins and the water clock, and below are the dungeons, and further on, just like above and below, there's also flow, which is moving water, which is like clean, moving, elemental, moving water, and stagnation, which is water that's stagnated, that has life in it, but maybe not the type of life that is hospitable to like a humanoid life form, right? But we also have past and present as well. And that's about as far as I'm going to go into that, because there's some major spoilers there. But this adventure isn't just delving into dungeons. There's, wasteland archaeology. There's riddle and problem solving. There's overcoming traps and complex adversaries. But in addition to all of that, there is a deeper and richer story which can unfold, and which the players themselves can have a major impact on how things go down. And there's even a role-playing rich murder investigation that takes place. But I can't get too much into that. And I feel like maybe I've missed some really important points. So I'm going to, again, pass the torch to Thilo to see if there's anything else that he wanted to add to that.
So I wanted to mention, without going into details, that this actually also includes a proper murder mystery investigation, which you probably would not expect. And I wanted to add one thing to the whole flow and stagnation dichotomy, because it's not just that flow and stagnation are, the one thing, flow is good and stagnation is evil. It's not as simple as that, because flow on one hand is obviously fresh water, it's life-giving and things like that. But it's also the water that can potentially tear your flesh from bone, that can generate torrential floods and things like that. Whereas, as Jonathan already mentioned, stagnant water can be extremely conducive to life, just not humanoid life, or the humanoid life that most of the people would, actually want to see. So that is an important angle. It's not just good, evil, flow stagnation. It's more complex.
And I'm showing the art right now of that room where the water flows in, and you'll notice it's a kind of a yin yang symbol. So it sounds like it's not just it's a balance act, right? It seems like it's about balance between the two. Right? Would I be right in that assumption, just kind of given the symbology I'm seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like life, you have to have evil to have good. You have to have light to have dark, right? So everything in life, there is that duality to it. So there's a balance in all things, right? And so what's happened is, over the time since Grecia, since everyone sealed themselves away in this temple, no one knows what happened after that. Everything was kind of erased from time, erased from existence. No one knows what transpired during that time, but things have become stagnant and have become unbalanced. And where it goes from here is up to you.
So, by chance, are you gonna lean into alignment at all? Does this flow and stagnation, does it play into alignment at all, or no?
No, I don't think we're the alignment is. I always leave alignment up to the dungeon master. Some people play heavily using alignment. Some people don't want to use alignment at all. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of consider that's a personal choice at your table. Now, if you are a DM that really wants to involve alignment in this, it could easily be added. You could easily incorporate that into the story and into flow and stagnation if you would like that. I'm sure that there are many ideas, and if people really like the idea of it too, I'm sure we could flesh something out on the blog in the future. And that's one of the things too, is we always provide free support materials. If you look at Rise of the Drow, we have numerous blog articles, even a detailed graphic showing the whole flow chart in really beautiful detail on how everything unfolds. So we're planning similar things for Rultmoork as well. We're going to be able to support the DMs, and and if there's enough demand for a particular aspect where people are like, "Ooh, I really like this idea of bringing in alignment to this," well, we can create that. And that's the fun thing about using the internet too. We can add these additions later, and you can read a blog article on how can you do that in your game. But yeah, we should circle back to the flow and stagnation mechanic to talk a little bit more about how that works.
Tell me a bit about it, because I got some cool art here. I see these gems. I see these creatures that look different.
So. Well, the final version is going to look different, especially the coloration. These were the prototypes, right? These are flow and stagnation tokens. And this one, when thrown at an enemy or a trap or something else, can cause it to go into stagnation mode. And when you throw this one, it could cause it to go into flow mode or cause additional effects to transpire, of which Thilo will describe in great detail.
All right. So, one of my personal pet peeves as a dungeon master is that you sometimes have these incredibly complex, beautiful adventures that have several items, that you can find in a respective dungeon, and they seem kind of divorced from their surroundings. Perhaps there is this rudimentary tie-in with everything that surrounds them. And what I wanted in Rultmoork to see was, a dungeon where not only engaging with the environment, but also engaging with the treasure you find, engaging with the items you find, and experimenting with them actually is rewarded. And so one of the key components regarding the design of, for example, specific monsters in Rultmoork, but also other challenges like environmental challenges, components of traps and things like that, hinge on the aspect that players at one point experiment with those items and or find a way in which to engage with the dungeon based on understanding the concepts of flow and stagnation. So if players actually think about how those components, how those concepts interact with the respective environment, they'll be rewarded for that. And that is also something that is represented in monsters that you can encounter in Rultmoork. So several monsters in this book actually have multiple modes. They can either be in stagnation mode or flow mode, and they have distinct abilities and play radically different from each other, depending on the mode. So if you, for example, change a creature into stagnation mode, there's a pretty decent chance it won't be as susceptible to things like poison or acid and things like that. And suddenly it might have an aura that slows you down once you get close to it, or that manages to, do things with you that, are stagnation themed. On the other hand, the same holds true for flow. So that, for example, certain creatures in flow mode can forcefully move you around the battlefield, which, depending on the respective environment that you are and depending on where they move you, can actually be really, really nasty and deadly if you play
They can be deadly.
So, that was part of my design process when it comes to the regular, in quotation marks, monsters, because let it be known that not a single one of the creatures in Rultmoork is one of the old monsters or one of the classic monsters. We've got a whole array of 100% unique and new creatures. This extends to all the NPCs that you may encounter, all the bosses, all monsters. It's 100% new material. We have this whole little bestiary section in the adventure so that all challenges you encounter are fresh and, challenge the party accordingly.
Okay, and you should talk a little bit about the Church of Still Waters too, while you're touching on flow and stagnation, because you're talking about the bestiary, and that's something that is also unique to this, is that this adventure is so customizable and allows DMs to really play to their strengths, to the things that they think their groups would want to see, or to enhance it as they see fit, is as little or as much as they wish. And I really like what you did there, Thilo.
Thank you.
I don't know if you'd like to describe that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So that this is once more a minor spoiler, let it be known. On the top of Rultmoork, there are the ancient ruins of Fort Rultmoork, so atop the spire. And a group of individuals lives there, and they call themselves the Church of Still Waters. They are in some ways a kind of pitiful ragtag band of exiles, of scoundrels, of fugitives, of people that the vagaries of fate have just propelled to this accursed spire. Most of them have certain problems. Some are visibly suffering from frostbite. They are obviously a people that has suffered due to the wars ravaging Aventryr, the climate, and so on and so forth. These individuals could be played in several ways, and I've deliberately not specified how to run them because different GMs have different preferences. I know that Jonathan ran them more like almost in some ways comedic, and that's totally acceptable and totally fine. I went another way because I'm a grimdark edgelord, no surprise there. So I ran them essentially like the NPCs in a Soulsborne game or in a Bloodborne game. They only utter these little sentence tidbits that are kind of opaque and kind of weird, and they are obviously unhinged to a different degree. So that is also definitely one of the options of how to run them. But the thing about this cult, so there you once more have the duality angle, which is also represented in the adventure. But the Cult of Still Waters has found a kind of blessing in that they believe themselves to worship Vasi, the goddess of fresh waters, but their heresy is completely different. They have found a blessing in stagnation, a kind of eternity, once more, Soulsborne angle, that renders them a challenge to deal with, to put it mildly. And one of their prophet, Arios the First, is a particularly interesting individual, and some of the other cultists as well. I think the component that Jonathan was pointing out beyond that would be the cultists. We have a regular cultist of the Stillwater stat block. Bam. Okay. Some GMs enjoy, having one stat block and just, using that for all the regular cultists, and then having a couple of named ones and, say, okay, that's totally fine. Some, like me, are a little bit, let's say, OCD about wanting some differences in my home games. I tend to, there's this orc tribe. Okay, I have to make like at least 40 or 50 different stat blocks for that particular tribe. And I actually do that because that's how my brain works. So essentially what I made was a little cultist customizer that takes the basic stat block, and you just have to look at it and then say, okay, now my group has like, I don't know, a wizard, a sorcerer focusing on area of effect battle magic, and, a warlock, and this cleric who's really into AoE spells and stuff like that. And you think, okay, if I want that card to be even remotely challenging and not being, just fireball nuked to smithereens, I'll just choose a couple of those guys to be dexterous cultists. So you have the cultist customizer, dexterous cultists, and you can, have the summary of, you have this many cultists, put X check marks there, and you'll say like, oh, my party is super AoE focused. I'll just put 10 check marks there. So 10 of the unnamed cultists are like dexterous cultists. 3 more are, tough bruisers, and 3 more are different kind of cultists. And I have done that for all kind of mookie creatures that you encounter. So you can use the cultist customizer if you want to, but you don't have to. So if you prefer your party to just deal with one stat block, perhaps because you don't like dealing with even those minuscule alterations for the different cult types with their different abilities, you don't have to. You can run your game like that. But if you want it more complex, if you want it more tactical, or if you have a group that has a ton of single target damage dealers that really bash faces in, you can also customize the cult in a way that makes this super easy. And you could do so while playing, or you can do so beforehand, so you have full flexibility.
I feel like that needs to be a blog post on how to design one of those for any creature, like ever, because that would be so handy. That would be a great blog post, man. That's your homework now.
Here's how you can make your standard carrion crawler, and here's some different variations of how you can make that carrion crawler more interesting.
Whatever, right? Rather than like a whole bunch, like to be able to take a stat block like that and just be able to, if it's bandits, and be able to just variety bandits on the fly. That would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I like that idea.
Creature and character customizer by AAW Games. Maybe it'll be a future thing.
that should be a thing for sure. So I know we're getting a little long on time, but I do want to give you a chance here. Let us know what's in the Kickstarter. First off, we'll obviously have a link in the description to where to go to back it, but I have a graphic up here, and we see a book, we see pawns and dice, and I see a box set. So tell us a bit about what's included in this Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'll tell you the different pledge levels. So $29 gets you the interactive PDF. So, I mean, if you just want the basics of, playing the adventure, you can get that with the PDF or with the standard hardcover. Standard hardcover is $44. That one has artwork by Kim Van Duyn, who has also worked on a lot of the official D&D books, and their artwork is absolutely beautiful. I love the standard cover, and that's the thing. By standard, in my mind, it's by no means standard. Maybe we should name it something else, like the awesome cover.
It
or
could
something.
be its own LE cover. We have there's 2 LE covers. Is what
exactly. So you've got that one, right? And then the next jump up is, and I should also mention our VTT. So we don't have it like as a pledge level, but if you scroll down further in the Kickstarter, you'll see in the add-ons at $39 per VTT. So if you want Fantasy Grounds, Roll20, or of course Foundry VTT,
who's doing that?
Which is Joe's preferred tabletop of choice, you could get that one. But yeah, for I believe it's $79 is a limited edition. We're doing a special print run that we're only doing one time of 500 limited edition copies with artwork by a good friend of mine, Nat Dam, who is actually both a musician in a few different bands over the years, and also is the predominant creator of poster artwork for touring bands of all types, actually, here in the Seattle area, even for like the biggest bands you can imagine. So he's been doing artwork for posters for like decades. And I basically want him to make me like a metal poster that goes on a book cover that we could also eventually probably have at cool t-shirts at Gen Con or something, right? Kind of like these Death Saves shirts, right? Pretty fun stuff. And that one, if we hit certain stretch goals, we'll have a lot of really cool extras as well. So watch for that. We just got to get funded. So, you got to help push us to funding people. And then at $129, and yes, that's quite a bit, but you get a lot in it, is the box set. So for $129, you get the collectible box set with the Kim Van Duyn artwork. You open that up and you have the standard cover, also with Kim Van Duyn artwork. And there'll be 2 bags in there. One will be blue and one will be green. So you've got flow and stagnation. And when you open those up, you'll see you have 11 flow tokens, which are magic items in the game. So you can give out a physical representation of the flow tokens, kind of like how we need to give inspiration sometimes at a table in real life. You'll actually have some kind of indicator, like, here, let me give you inspiration. You toss them a wooden chip or a poker chip or something, right? Same kind of thing. You've got these little tokens that'll come in the bags, and again, these are the prototypes. So the final coloration is a little bit different than this, especially for flow. But you have 11 flow and stagnation tokens. And then there's also a full set of dice, so the full set of flow dice and stagnation dice. And by full set, I'm saying the D&D style full set. You get the 2d20s, the 4d6, and then the one of each other die. So you've got that. And then you also have pawns. And the pawns are all of the monsters, NPCs, everything that appears in the adventure is there. So you don't need to worry about having the proper miniatures. Of course, you can swap them out for miniatures if you want, but the reason you probably want pawns is that with flow and stagnation mode, you need a visual representation of these creatures, not in just one form, because these creatures may be changing on the fly based on what the players decide to do. They may use a magic item, and all of a sudden this creature that's green on the battlefield changes from stagnation mode to flow mode. And so when that happens, you'll pick that token, that pawn off the battlefield, and drop the blue one on. And then in the text, for those stat blocks, the green text is stagnation, the blue is flow, and the black applies to both creatures. So whenever it changes modes, you still look at the stat block, except for there's some variations depending on resistances and immunities and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's the box set. Oh, and I should mention the player handouts. It also comes with a series of players handouts. They're going to be in really nice glossy cardstock. And so these player handouts include things like the Lexime Amulet, which will be an actual cipher for Grekian that you can hand to the players and they can use with other handouts. When you hand them something, they come to the doors and there's these ancient runes on the door and they're trying to figure out, well, what are these? You hand them the runes. Now they've got the cipher, the magic item they found, and they've got the runes. Okay, well, how do we decide? Oh, okay, so we can translate this and they can, do that themselves right there, right then and there. There are other handouts that may be giving clues. There's some ancient murals that you find along your journey, and at first glance, yeah, those are cool artwork. Someone created those murals long ago, but they're actually very important to the story and to knowing how to deal with potential threats. In fact, some of them, and one in particular, will save your life later on. And let's just say those guardians we were talking about earlier, you might want to keep your eyes peeled for any murals involving those Grekian guardians, because there may be a clue in there that could help lead you to preventing a TPK. So that's what the box set has in it. And again, I know it's a high price, but unfortunately, we're living in a time where things have shifted a little bit. Print prices have all increased across the board. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of that. And also we've had a big shipping nightmare of containers getting stuck and all kinds of craziness going on. So the overall price of everything has gone up for all of us. And I was a little scared to put that out there at 129. I really wanted to do something more like $99 if I could, but we just couldn't make it cost effective and actually make the project happen
I feel like
with that lower price. So
I feel like there's a lot of that. I mean, handouts, pawns, dice,
Mm-hmm.
and you said that the physical book itself, the standard cover book is in the box set.
Is in the box.
Is there a pledge level that gets you that you can get the LE book and the box set together, or is that would it be an add-on?
There is not. It would be an add-on. The reason why is we have to keep meticulous track of how many copies of the limited edition sell, because we don't. This limited edition, I know sometimes people say, "Oh, it's a limited edition." Like Rise of the Drow's is a collector's edition, right? We didn't say it was a Rise of the Drow limited edition. It's a Rise of the Drow collector's edition, but this is in fact a limited edition. We did the same with Survivalist Guide to Spelunking. We did a limited edition, so we printed those. And once they're gone, which they almost are, I think they're gone from here in my office. And I think my distributor only has like maybe 20 copies left. Once Survivalist Guide to Spelunking limited edition is gone, we'll never print it again. And the reason why we do those things is we want people to have a chance to get those, special collectible copies. They can bring them to Gen Con. We'll all sign them. And of course, you're probably going to do the Foundry conversion of this. So you'll also be signing these books along with us.
If I may add one brief thing regarding the handouts and regarding one of the things that I love about Rultmoork. All the people out there have probably had this instance where they ran an adventure and had this cool artwork. And, on this cool artwork, you had a couple of heroes fighting some monsters. And you were like, yeah, okay, those are kind of cool heroes, but they are not my heroes. They are not my players' heroes. And in Rultmoork, in the artworks that we use and handouts and stuff like that, you actually don't have that. You have what the players and their characters get to see without immersion breaking, for example, iconics or stuff like that. Even when it comes to, perspectives that show heroes engaging with adversaries and things like that. The focus of those handouts is, to be actually useful at the table for the GM. And that was one of the core tenets for example, the artworks that we use in Rultmoork, which Jonathan already hinted at with, for example, the murals and things like that.
Yeah.
It's not something that you usually get to see in most adventures. It's just, this verbose description of a mural that you sometimes see, and that the GM has to convey that. Yeah, in this instance, you have the description and you have the actual mural that you can, show your players. This is what you
book up. You don't have to turn the book around.
Yeah, exactly.
Hide the side. It's like, here you go. Put it out there. If you got the little clips for the back of your DM screen where you can put the handouts on your DM screen, or when we do the VTTs, there'll be handouts you can put out on the virtual on the screen, just like you have on your table.
Yeah, and it's nice to hand the players something that they can use too, because when you give the players those things, they'll realize, wait, there's a reason we have this. Yeah. Kind of like the magic items, kind of like the monsters, kind of like everything. Everything in this adventure ties into other aspects of it. There's not anything just thrown in here. We didn't just create something just to create it. It's all tied in. It all has a reason. It all has a reason to exist now, the reason something happened in the past, the reason things came to be, and they all tie in. And so long as people use their wits and are careful observers, they just might survive.
Awesome. So as we wrap up, Jonathan had made a nice, generous offer before the stream. He has some stuff that we'd like to give away to some viewers. So once I have this posted this week, I will put it up on Twitter. And all you have to do is retweet my tweet, retweet the video out, help share it out. And we're going to pick, is it 4? We have 4 prizes?
Yeah, we have 4 prizes and a smattering of others that will come along with the prizes. And we can go through each one real quickly here. And I'll actually have Thilo describe the first 3, maybe just in a few short sentences, since I know we don't have a lot of time. But we've got the Drider of the Underworld soft cover here.
Play either gorgeous Araxala Rider, the aesthetic, beautiful drow upper torso, spider torso that are well integrated in drow society, or the grotesquely mutated, almost insane, failed, those punished by the spider deity herself. And test your metal and wits against the extremely deadly Drider of Aventryr. And if you're particularly unlucky, you might actually encounter Mrokatar, the Dwarf Smasher. If you hear this beautiful sound like run.
So
I just saved your character.
This is you getting to play a Drider playable race. There are a few different ones. So this is really, really cool.
All right, so that's the first prize. The next prize is Occult Secrets of the Underworld.
I love this book.
Thank you. I'm incredibly happy with Occult Secrets of the Underworld. Occult Secrets of the Underworld are playable character options for the respective underworld races like Ahulings, Vestradi, different wars, the Drow, and so on and so forth. And I got really complex and evocative with all of them. And I had complete creative control over these particular creatures. Thank you so much, Jonathan, because I'm incredibly proud of pretty much every one of them.
Yeah.
They are really unique. For example, if you want to play an almost indestructible dragonborn character who is forced to reincarnate into a different subspecies of Draki, which are Aventryr's kind of dragonborn, whenever they die, you can do that. If you want to play a dwarf who can channel the voices of the ancestors, if you want to play a fungus person who has the option of creating clouds of spores and controlling people with those spores, you can become a Sporcerer. I'm sorry, I'm really fond of puns. If you want to play a devil dwarf who can conjure forth the souls of the damned from hell, you can do that.
It's a good book. So, it's a great supplement if you're playing Rise of the Drow or playing any Underdark campaign. It is my opinion, it's a must-have accessory, man. It's so good.
Thank you.
And if you happen to not win this, there's PDFs available on the site, and these are also print-on-demand books. So, very, very well done books.
Yeah, Vestradi is very cool too.
Yes.
So that is our second prize. Our third prize is the Survivalist Guide to Spelunking. And while this one is the standard edition hardcover, I think since this is Joe's show, and since Joe kicked butt at Gen Con with us and worked tirelessly running games, working the booth, and is such a good friend, that I think we would like to switch this one out and give out a limited edition. So we'd like to give out one of the last, I think I've got one more case in my garage. So I think that's 6 of them. And then after that, it started, I think our distributor has 20. So I think there's only 26 copies of the limited edition left. That's the one with the gold foil on the cover. And yeah, that's when we were selling at Gen Con. So whatever Thomas has left over that's going to Gamehole Con, what I've got in stock here and the distributor has, that's all that's left. And we're never printing that limited edition one again. This is a standard edition here, but the limited edition, we will give one of those out.
It's an all black cover with the gold writing.
Yes.
Very nice.
Black leather. It has a gold ribbon, metallic ribbon bookmark. It has the gold head and tail bands on them.
You can see my review of the book. I did the unboxing, and I have a video on. I'll put a link in the description for that one.
This one is by Stephen Yearley, Thilo Graf, and Douglas Niles. And yes, it's that Douglas Niles that created the Dungeoneer Survival Guide. And Thilo will tell you more as I flip through this here.
So, Jonathan approached me at one point to help write a book that was supposed to be, a kind of sequel to the Dungeoneer Survival Guide. And I was like, oh my God, because no pressure. Because the Dungeoneer Survival Guide is one of my all-time favorite books, and I actually think it still holds up to this day. I've been using that particular book for Pathfinder, for D&D 5th edition, for DCC, and so on and so forth. And so I thought I don't want to just upgrade, the Dungeoneer Survival Guide to 5e. What I wanted to do was something radically different. So I came up with rules for making momentum matter, with streamlined hex crawling rules, streamlined survival rules, hypothermia, shroomitis, call of the lightless depths, a kind of tie-in of segmented spellcasting, better chase rules, hunting rules, foraging rules, and so on and so forth.
Vision. I like the vision section too.
Thank you, man. And I tried to design the entire book so you don't have a pay-in. So you don't need to take X feats to use, for example, a hunting engine, or you don't have to, be this particular character or have this proficiency to do anything in this book. So a lot of this book is designed, pretty much everything, including the rules, is designed in a way that it will survive 5th edition. Yes. While designed for 5th edition, I know people have come to Gen Con and told me, I've been using this with Dungeon Crawl Classics or with Pathfinder 1st edition or Pathfinder 2nd edition. And one person even came to me and told me like, oh yeah, I've been using components of this book with Shadowrun. And I'm like, what?
I remember that guy.
How? But so
that's cool.
I've done it. It's still 5e, 100%. But if you know the basics of 5e, if you know how a proficiency bonus works, then you can convert this pretty easily. I have Underworld hazard generators in this, where you can just throw together hazards to add to your combats to make terrain matter more.
Let's talk about the tables, man. You got the tables that are in this book are just unreal. There's so many cool tables to roll on.
It's available on Foundry. I know because I did the Foundry conversion, and there's so many tables. Took me forever. So many tables.
You're probably like, never make another book like this, guys.
You're welcome.
Seriously, Joe, you did such a fantastic job with the Foundry conversion, man. Because honestly, wow, to me, this is crazy witchcraft, and I'm just incredibly grateful.
And one thing I will say about this book that I really like, is if you are a fan of, especially if you're one of the old school guys, if you're one of the old school AD&D guys who did come to 5th edition, but you love that 1st edition AD&D feel, the layout and the art of the book has that feeling. It's a very 1st edition feel in 5th edition. So that was one of the things that I loved. And I remember the first time I opened the book, when it came in the mail, I opened it up. I knew it was going to be black and white art because I had seen it when I was doing the Foundry conversion, but the art just pops off the page. It really, it's like the blacks are so black and the whites are so white, and it just pops. And every page has those little comics on the bottom too. I love those. There's like a story along the bottom of every page.
It's really fun. I mean, these are great. Yeah. Every page has these comics.
Such a good book. Is one of the prizes of my shelf. I love it. I've adapted a lot of those rules to not just the Underdark, like the resource rules and the chase rule. You can use it anywhere. It's not just about the Underdark.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be used as a wilderness survival guide. Foraging, hunting rules, all that stuff. You can use that above ground as much as you do below. So now, shall we announce our big?
What's the big one?
Giveaway?
What's the big one?
Well, let's take a wild guess here. It's weighs in at like 4.5 pounds. Mm-hmm. It's been sitting on my lap here for a little bit, so it's getting heavy. It's got a soft touch cover. Mm-hmm. It's got foil on the cover and spine, 2 ribbon bookmarks, premium paper quality, purple head and tail bands, and it is our best-selling Rise of the Drow Collector's Edition. Hey. MSRP on this is $129.99, but we're giving it away for free on DM Toolbox.
That is
one lucky winner.
Well over 500 pages of book.
Mm-hmm.
There is, was it 200 or 300 monsters? I don't remember now.
It's some insane amount. And anyone that's like doubtful of this book, what I always tell people, just go onto AAWgames.com and go onto the product and read the reviews. It's insane. We have I think 150 or 170 reviews now. every single one is 5 stars except for one person who rated it 4 stars who had only looked at like the first few pages. But everyone's giving it 5 stars, and some of those reviews are really lengthy. So please go read about it. If you if you don't win this and you want to purchase it, we do have it for $99 on our site. So you can pay $129 at your local game shop. You can get this worldwide. It is, like I said, it's our bestseller. Or if you buy it direct from AAW Games, it's $99. But this is kind of our pride and joy. And it's also a good segue into Thilo dropping a major spoiler on something coming to Kickstarter late 2022 or possibly early 2023 that he's been working tirelessly on.
Go on.
You have seen Rise of the Drow. You have heard and played through the story of those adventurers from the surface coming down below and putting an end to the first house of the grand metropolis of Holov, starting the cycle anew, where, a new first house of the Drow would have to rise to the occasion. But then something happened. The Queen of Poison and Shadows, the deity of the Drow, was less than enthused about the latest failure exhibited by them. And as happened before, she turned her back on her children. And this thing happened where the demi-plane of venom started leaking into the underworld, creating areas where venomous mutations started happening, where whole areas became wastelands. And then those filthy other species, those bearded dwarves, those Svirfneblin, those Vestradi, those Herol, those Kolyatur, all of those species of little people that the Drow used to crush under their heels time and again. Inspired by those surface worlders, they banded together. They formed a coalition, and they took their chance. They attacked Holov, and a metropolis of Drow, the center of worship for the Queen of Poison and Shadows, weakened by the absence of the deity, weakened by the most civil of civil wars to claim the position of first houses, weakened by the hour of venom, weakened by all of that, crushed the Drow resistance. 2.5 years have passed. The coalition has taken Holov. They have taken all that really means to be Drow, and they try to remake the Dark Elves in their own image. We won't let that happen. It is time to dare to be evil, to dare to be devious, and show that Drow will not bow. It is time to show the coalition what real Drow are made of. Coming soon from AAW Games. Rise of the Drow, After the Fall. Play Drow. Choose your house. Choose your unique abilities. Infiltrate, assassinate, destroy, escape, and in the long run, break the coalition's stranglehold.
I got goosebumps.
Awesome. Yes.
I absolutely love too that as Thilo is getting deep into this narration, that in Deutschland it's getting darker and darker and darker. It's like it was meant to be, and it was meant to be on this show, DM Toolbox, because it's like we were all just hanging out at Gen Con not that long ago, so it's kind of like getting a little glimpse into, oh, are we playing a game now? When do we get to start?
I know.
And maybe that's a thing.
When do we get to start? I want to play.
Yeah, that's actually the thing. When we were walking outside, Thomas had this amazing idea of, hey, what if we play this? What if instead of Thilo running it, what if Thilo turns it over to Joe? Joe puts in a Foundry, and we all get online and run it. And we get like the AAW Games crew. We can even have Maddie. Maddie really wants to play role-playing games with us. We get a Maddie. One of Joe's kids could join us. We could all be playing Drow on the internet together. I mean, this sounds like a really good idea to me. It sounds like a lot of fun.
It's nice for the writers to get it from the player's point of view for once too.
Yeah, Thilo could be a player, and Joe will get to be the DM, and then you guys will be able to get some really nice insight. And we'll get to give a glimpse to people way before it comes out, and people can watch the stream and get to know us better too. So I really like the idea, and I think that's Thomas. That's all Thomas right there. But I like the idea, and I absolutely love being able to pass this torch. Just like during this conversation, I've been passing the torch to Thilo, and that's what we're doing more and more. Is like we both have our strengths and we both have our weaknesses, and I think we play off each other really well. And to be able to pass this torch in the Underdark to Thilo with Occult Secrets of the Underworld, with the Drider, Underworld Races and Classes, and with this Survivalist Guide to Spelunking, and now welcoming him into this Drow city of Holoth is just, it's like a special occasion. You know, we're finally coming together as a team and as a family, and I'm excited to see where this goes, because
so the way I see this, right? This is a Drow rebellion. The Drow have been quelled and under the control of the other races, and now you're playing a Drow, essentially rising up and fighting for your freedom to be evil.
Yes.
It's so twisted. I love it.
And you are actually fighting a tyrannical regime of the good guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wait, because there can be, just like we were talking about balance and duality earlier. Yeah, there's good and evil, right? But I mean, things can actually get too good. Things can get too evil. There is always a balance. So yeah,
absolutely, man. This is gonna be good. It's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Appreciate you talking to us about the Kickstarter and about the next Kickstarter. I wasn't aware you were going to drop that on here, so.
Of course we're going to drop it on here, man. We're dropping all kinds of stuff. We're dropping more prizes than we've ever dropped before. Like I said, I wouldn't mind doing this like a once a week AAW thing where we get on our stage on Discord, which if anybody hasn't checked out yet, bit.ly/AAW Games will take you to our sign up for our Discord, and hopefully Joe will post on here. But we have a great community on there of like minds, and that's how Joe and I met, and how we all got connected. So yeah, I
was just like, oh wow, this Rise of the Drow book is awesome. I want to put it on a Foundry, and Jonathan's like, want to get paid? So I was like, all right. So that's how that started. But yeah, the AAW Discord is awesome. Definitely come hang out, check it out. We're really active on there, answering questions, helping out. We talk about all the books. We have channels for all the different VTTs that stuff's published on. So whatever you guys need, man, the AAW channel is a great place to just hang out, make friends too. And you'll be looking for GMs next year for Gen Con. So it's a good place to sign up for that. So yeah,
we'll hook you guys up. If you run games for us, we'll hook you guys up.
Absolutely. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Joe.
Excited.
Thank you.
So
this was the Nat 20.
The Nat 20.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, that's it for now. And until next time, roll those dice.